How many of you will have stopped listening to me by the end of my speech? For those of you who have ADD, this is very likely. And according to statistics, 1 out of 3 people in the audience will have ADD and will stop listening. This means that in a classroom of children that have 30, 1 to 3 children will have ADD or ADHD according to their pediatrician or their clinical mental health person. However, there is a problem in America these days that we overdiagnose how many people have ADHD and ADD. This may not be a problem so much with the actual diagnosis, but with the system of how it is diagnosed. To start, I'm going to tell you what ADD is, and then I will tell you what ADHD is. They are 2 forms of a mental health disorder that are intertwined and connected, yet they are both separate and distinct. ADHD is the one that tends to be more disruptive, and it tends to be the one that is more overdiagnosed. ADD is attention deficit disorder. It is something that is classified by the inability to pay attention. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is the book that psychiatrists and psychologists use when classifying disorders, if you have ADD, you will have a symptom of up to 6 or more symptoms of inattention. Inattention is something, a symptom would be, for example, you cannot organize your thoughts, you cannot organize your homework. You have the inability to listen to somebody for more than 3 seconds at a time without your attention being caught by something else. In a speech, this may come to be as something shiny in the background, or even a loud noise from the back of the audience. Now, ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and that includes hyperactivity. So along with the symptoms of ADD, which is the inattention, you will also be hyperactive, which means the inability to sit still, or you will also have the symptom of impulsiveness, which is the inability to think before you leap. Most children develop this somewhere in their teenage years. However, those with ADHD seem to have the inability to develop this normally. ADD and ADHD have many symptoms that coincide with other behavioral and mental disorders, however, which is why there is overdiagnosis in America. The problem is not that things are being overdiagnosed, but things are being misdiagnosed. For example, a child with autism often does not have the ability to comprehend what you are asking them. This does not mean that they are not paying attention, it just means that they do not understand. Now, these 2 symptoms can look alike, and they can sound alike, and they can provoke the same frustration in a teacher. However, autism and ADHD or ADD are completely different. Now, the symptoms that overlap can also be physical and not just mental or cognitive. These symptoms could be a middle ear infection, which prevents hearing, or it could be an undetected seizure, which is actually more common than most people think. 1 out of 100 people in the state of New York have epilepsy, and this epilepsy is not just the epilepsy that people think of, which is the uncontrollable seizures where people are waving around, but it's the epilepsy that is mental and it just shuts down your brain, and they're called absence seizures. And this too can be form a symptom that looks like ADD or ADHD, in which your attention wanders, and yet the person is not actually mentally there. It's not just that their attention is somewhere else. And anxiety or depression can also have symptoms of ADD or ADHD, which is unfortunate because a tragedy can bring about these symptoms, and people will automatically diagnose a child as having ADD or ADHD, whereas you should actually address the concern of the grief that the child is feeling. Now, the National Institute of Mental Health talks about all of these diagnoses, and it also talks about the symptoms that you may have. But the National Institute of Mental Health recommends that parents, if they are looking to diagnose their child with a disorder, or even to figure out what is going on in their child's mind, they recommend that they talk to their pediatrician first, but that they also talk to experts in the field of mental disorders in children. Because the pediatrician will probably diagnose the physical disorders, if there are any, But the expert in mental disorders will go through the entire list of physical disorders, take a family history, so that if there's schizophrenia in the family history or depression or anxiety, that they will take those into consideration and not just label the child as ADD or ADHD or having them. Now, Dr. Manuel Montecastillo Maria, who is a doctor in Florida and he deals with children, he's written a book on overdiagnoses, says that the problem is not overdiagnosis, it is misdiagnosis. He tells a very sad story of a little girl, age 8, named Maria. And Maria was diagnosed with ADHD and given the medications that are commonly given to ADHD, such as Ritalin. However, her behavior was getting worse. Her mother took her to see Dr. Manuel Montecastillo, and he took a complete family history and realized that the poor Maria's grandmother had schizophrenia in her, and that Maria had been complaining about speaking to and hearing voices, which is also a common symptom of schizophrenia. Once she had been weaned off of Ritalin and the other drugs, they were able to medicate her according to schizophrenia, and she was better able to adapt to school and learn better. And while she is still behind, she is able to catch up more easily than she was when she was on the wrong medication. Now, school nurses, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, they administer the most medication for chronic health problems to children with ADHD. Now, these children have been diagnosed with ADHD. The school nurses do not know if they actually have it, but they have been given permission to give this medication, and daily they administer this medication. I know a young boy who has ADD or ADHD, and he spent most of his life just skating through school, and once he got to college, he had a very difficult time focusing because college lacks the structure that most educational systems have, and at least the primary education, in high school, in middle school, and in elementary school. He not only has been given medication, which works, but he has been given medication sparingly, but he has also been given certain techniques to help him conquer his ADHD so that he may do better in school and do better as an adult in the world. This person is my brother, and I am pleased to say that he has done very well for himself in the past semesters. He has gotten several A's, whereas in the past he has failed several courses and had to retake them. So hopefully, in the future, you will not just think that there is a problem with overdiagnosis, because ADHD and ADD still exist, and they should be treated as such, but there are other solutions besides medication. But there are also other problems that could be causing the symptoms that perhaps are ADD or ADHD. So please, if you have children or you know children that you think you may have ADD or ADHD, please get them the help that they need, not what you think they need.